No,
Can you all hear me?
no, I can hear Ranjini auntie clearly.
Okay, so mine is a problem. Okay.
Okay, so yes, whatever the archaeologists would have excavated, or they've kind of excavated the temple itself in so many places. So that's how we got to know about different generation, different dynasty, different periods, and that's how we got to know. Studying those cultures, we got to know whatever the historical stories we get to hear or we get to watch, whether it's Ramayana, Mahabharat, or any other epic stories we know is through these excavations. So, museum is a place where all these things are stored, and um, it is actually restored if it is spoiled. There is a team of people who will work on the restoration, be it paintings or coins or anything. They work on the restoration and they preserve it in the museum. Okay. So yes, with the lockdown, and of course, it's very difficult to visit any of the galleries. Now, last year, sometime in December, we did had a virtual tour of Chitra Sante, and today I want to bring forth the Google and the British Museum together. They have developed a virtual tour of the museums all around the different continents. Okay, so I'll just share screen and then take you all, and maybe you can choose the time period which you want to select. So one by one, you can take turns based on your curiosity. We can just jump onto different timelines, and we can see what is available and what is being stored, and little bit information on those particular things. Okay, so here we go. Yes. So can you all see? So this is the
Yes.
museum of the world. Okay. So now there are five continents, that is Africa, America, Asia, Europe, and Oceania. So, and then onto the left, it is the timeline. You can travel, and the first thing what they have earliest they have stored is
Actually, you
200.
can zoom out to show the full screen. Zoom out.
So you can see only this, is it?
Only the particular, it is zoomed in actually, I guess. Yeah, you can zoom out.
Now, is it better?
Yes, it is zooming out. It is zooming out.
It's going. Okay, the earliest thing what we have it in the museum is 2100 BC. It's like so many thousand years ago. You want to see what is there? What we have excavated? So I click on this and something opens up here. That's the I Leela, I
Which
think
website or app are you using to show this?
wait, I think I will remove that this thing, share screen, portion screen.
Okay.
Ranjini auntie, I have one question.
Huh.
Did you
Yes.
make this presentation or like did you find it in website?
I did not make this. This is the museums, the British Museum got in touch with the Google, and this is what they have developed for us to have a virtual museum. Okay.
Is this called the Museum of the World?
Yes, it is called the Museum of the World. We have five continents and all the details about the earliest findings to some AD we have. Okay, let's figure out. So they've named it as history connected. And what is interesting in this is there whichever area something was developing, and at the same time somewhere else also something was happening. So this is how it is connected. So now we are going to okay, let's go from here. And what I showed was the earliest findings we have. So here we have from 2000 AD to 2100 BC. Okay, that's a lot, many thousands of years ago. So see, if we choose any of these continents, for example, say I'm clicking on Africa, and then this image opens up and we can understand what are the details about this precious thing, what this museum is having. And can
I
you
want
see
to
the
go.
links?
Uh,
1 second.
can you post the link in chat?
Yeah, I will soon. So can you see the yellow dot is connected to pink, and then blue, and then green, and all that. Simultaneously, something is happening at the same time. And we can also understand what was excavated at the same period, two different continents, what was being done, how was the lifestyle and all that. So I'll just click on this. Mm. Yeah, you want me to play the audio? The audio will give you an explanation about this particular ceramic bowl. And imagine this is done in 2000 AD, and see the detail of the artwork.
Rashid Qureshi's multimedia installation, The Path of Roses, is a contemporary work celebrating the 14th century mystic poet Rumi. Christopher Spring tells us more.
This is a wonderful ceramic bowl created by the Algerian artist Rashid Qureshi for his multimedia installation, The Path of Roses, which was dedicated to celebrating the 13th century mystic poet Rumi, who traveled from what is today Afghanistan through North Africa, across the Mediterranean to Turkey, to found the dervish order, the slow-turning dervishes, and their famous dance in Konya in modern-day Turkey. It shows his metal anthropomorphic figures, which are part of this installation, The Path of Roses, and also textiles, embroidered once again with these extraordinary metal figures, which are somewhere between kind of Arabic calligraphy and Chinese calligraphy. The bowl is kind of conceived in the form of an astrolabe, which were these medieval navigation devices that were used in both the Christian and the Islamic worlds.
Okay. So you see his work, and can you, what are the things you can observe here?
Something kind of scripted actually.
I think I can see few letters on those line thingies.
You saw some letters, okay? And
Yeah, I also think it's some kind of art with letters.
with letters.
I
Which
think it's some
language is
kind
it?
of message.
Which language is it?
I have no.
I think so. It is. I can only see P and N and V
Okay.
and I.
Can you see this? Okay, over here, it looks like Arabic, right?
Yeah.
These, okay.
And also the pattern is probably that yin and yang pattern.
Yeah, in
It's like that.
space. But here the artist is also recording something. See, if you notice here, it is the ear. It looks like ears,
There's
different
something
ear
one
and
nine
something.
nine. There's some numbers.
Yeah, some particular year and some symbolic representation. And you see some kind of Arabic script here as well. Here, actually, a very less amount of design or drawing is used, but is more of the script which the artist has used. Probably, these stuff they had this, like, in Ming dynasty and different dynasties, how they used to have their life study, or um, they would record the what to say about the generation. They wanted to pass down their generation, so they would record the details of that particular family or that particular dynasty. If we go ahead and see Chinese this thing and all, they had huge barrels and pots. On that, a lot of things were written, like, this person, this person was the king, and this is how his entire life was, and all that. They would carve it and keep it on all the artifacts. And here, like that person was talking, maybe he was influenced by Rumi's poetry, and then he created something like this. So shall we just click on something is connecting to the pink dot? So shall we just connect and see to the pink dot? So this is from Polynesia. Oh, now that's the earliest frock they have. It's textile.
This island dress is a thing of beauty from the Cook Islands, celebrating the island's adoption of Christian faith. Here is Lysant Bolton, keeper at the British Museum.
Dresses like this are based on the clothing style that European missionaries introduced to the Pacific. They introduced loose tent-like dresses to cover up all the embarrassment of the clothing that Pacific Islanders wore. And the dresses were often called Mother Hubbards in different parts of the Pacific, a term which in some places has continued and in some places been forgotten. This dress is of a type that's a descendant of the Mother Hubbard, but in each part of the Pacific, dresses take a slightly different form so that it's possible to recognise where they come from. It's not hard in this case because this dress is made of calico or fabric printed in celebration of the Cook Islands Christian Church. It's a dress from the Cook Islands in the southern Pacific. It's celebrating the Pacific Conference of Churches, which met in the Rarotonga in the Cook Islands in 2002. So the dress is both about a descendant from what the missionaries introduced, but it's also a way of looking at the fact that Christianity is now very important in the Pacific Islands. People have taken it unto themselves and hold to it firmly and celebrate Christian events and celebrations in a way that those who deplore missionaries sometimes find hard to swallow.
Okay, I never knew the fashion was the initial fashion was like, adapting religion also in the clothing. I never knew that. So yes, this is how the Museum of the World works virtually. So you guys can pick up any time or any any period or any of the continents so that I can click and then we'll explore.
Ranjani, one question. How are they connected? They're connected in time, is it?
Yeah, they're connected in the
This,
times, and simultaneously, this has been happening simultaneously. So on the Oceania, a lot of importance was given to Christianity, and at that period in this particular region, this was the topic which is growing. And the other side of what we saw in Africa, it's again Islam, and they're kind of recording their religious stuff. So which dot shall I click? Anybody?
Some dot which is in Asia.
Asia. Shall I click the first one?
No, the oldest one.
I think the oldest one we don't have in Asia. We have it in Africa.
Only the oldest one of the Asia.
Oldest one of the Asia. Then we are crossing now. Here we are entering BC, and this might be the oldest. Okay, so this is the oldest one in Asia.
Actually, this is so cool. Just the sounds are nice.
Jewelry. Okay, this is the oldest, and it says it's from Iraq.
From southern Iraq and dating to about 2600 to 2400 BC, these beads and pendants came from one of the first royal graves at Ur to be excavated. Sarah Collins, assistant keeper of the early Mesopotamia collections, suggests they speak of our desire to adorn ourselves.
The jewelry at Ur is very spectacular, using techniques, gold working and carving of stones that were very advanced, including filigree work and inlaying. Many are made of materials that were not found in Mesopotamia, such as lapis lazuli, which came from Afghanistan, and carnelian, which came from the Indus or India, and gold from Egypt or Nubia. Mostly these materials arrived in raw form and were transformed by Sumerian craftsmen. And here we see their fondness for leaves and flowers and motifs from nature. And again, using these colors of gold, red, and blue, which seem to have been particularly pleasing combination of contrasting colors to delight the Sumerians, because we see them frequently on different objects as well as jewelry.
Interesting. When I saw this picture with you guys first time, I thought it looks like the quilling. See, these beads look like the paper quilling, right? And then when I heard her talk, she mentioned the word filigree. Filigree is a method of quilling only. So imagine if I don't know if it is made out of metal or whatever. So they were, what is it made up of? Amazing, no? Then if it is made up of metals, then they would have made thin strips of metal and then rolled it, and they would have made those designs. Isn't it interesting? And of course, this is a color, the blue color, what you see, it's called Prussian blue. And this color was the most, whichever era you check in, this color is very prominent and dominant. And it even today, the freshness of that color remains. Oh, I wonder how they did metal filigree or quilling. Okay, where shall we go next? So very near.
Ranjini auntie,
Yes, Vimal.
can you put something in Europe?
Europe. Shall I click on this blue dot?
Yes.
Okay. So what do we have? Greece. We have a sculpture.
This marble figurine of a woman is from the early Bronze Age, about 2600 to 2400 BC. It comes from the Cyclades, Aegean Sea. Andrew Shapland, who is a Greek Bronze Age curator at the British Museum, explains why it is so highly valued today.
When this figurine came into the British Museum in the 19th century, with its clean lines and its abstract form, surprisingly to us perhaps, it was regarded as ugly. It was described in the sculpture catalogue of the late 19th century as a primitive idol. The contrast with much later naturalistic Greek sculpture, if you can imagine Greek sculpture with its much more accurate, as we see it, depictions of the human body, compared to this object, where the human body has been simplified to a few forms, the nose, the breasts, the folded arms, but really no attempt has been made to show the human body as it is. By the early 20th century, attitudes had begun to change, The simplicity of this figure actually attracted modern artists such as Brancusi and Picasso, who were looking for different models on which to base their art. As a result, this figurine started to become seen as somewhere near the origin of art and perhaps a different beginning for modern artists such as these. And as a result, its value increased in the art market, which is just one way to evaluate figures such as these. Of course, what it meant to the people of the 3rd millennium BC in the Cyclades who made it is much different again, and we can only guess at what meaning a figurine such as this had to them. Perhaps it was used in funerary ritual, but we don't really know.
Now most of the artists now are going back to this style, minimalistic style. And
Ranjini aunty, can you show the other photos?
Yes, I can. Vimal, you were saying something.
I was asking, it's not new.
It's the oldest.
This Canaanite bronze figure dates back to about 2000 to 1700 BC. He might be a god, he might be a warrior, he might even be a warrior god. What does Jonathan Tubb, keeper of the Department of the Middle East, think about him?
We find a number of bronze figurines, statuettes, throughout the period known as the Bronze Age in Canaan, period from about 2000 down to about 1200 BC. The one that we have here is quite a fine one and probably represents a warrior, given the headdress, given the type of belt. He's not carrying any weapons. They may be missing. Traditionally, you might expect him to have held a spear, perhaps in one hand, and a type of sword in the other. Might be a god, but we tend to say any figurine is a god, and I don't think it's necessarily the case. It may also represent what is known as a votive figure. In other words, if you wanted something really, really badly from your god, you would take a representation of that god to the temple and deposit it there and make your wish, make your plea to the god. They generally are a little bit poorer in quality than this one, which, as I said, is quite fine. So I suspect that this was perhaps a decoration for a temple, for an elite member of society, and does in fact represent a warrior.
I also want to bring in this point. By this time, if they are making bronze sculptures, that means you should. We can also think of the discovery of the bronze. How is it processed, and to use it in the art. And if you just have to do a little bit research, it will be amazing to know. How they discover these metals and what metals and what can they create out of that metals apart from of course if we just visit the Chinese this thing that they had huge vessels built in bronze, okay, because they had mastered to use this particular metal, and they were the ones who created huge ones. And when the cities were built, they had every lane they had this huge vessel, and it constantly they were boiling water, so the visitors would use it for refreshment and things like that, and every lane they plan to have this. So to understand how it was created, how it was discovered, it's really nice. You can just do a little bit research on bronze. Yes. Do you want to see this animal? Anyone? Oh, it looks like an animal. It's an Egyptian dwarf god.
From 288 at Amethyst, Cyprus, and dating to about 600 to 500 BC, this terracotta figure of the god Bes is squatting with his hands on his knees. Thomas Keeley, who looks after the Cyprus collection at the British Museum, explains his significance.
This terracotta figurine is rather ugly, but is a representation of the Egyptian god Bes, who was a powerful and popular deity who looked after households, families and children, but he was also a god of war, music and sex. This figurine was placed in a tomb in Cyprus sometime around 550 BC. Bess is usually depicted in this slightly grotesque manner, naked, emphasizing male genitals, for example, but sometimes he's shown wearing a kilt and dancing, and especially on Cyprus, his image was transformed into that of the great god of the island, who was very different to the original Egyptian deity. Some people argue that the image of Bess influenced the development of the Christian image of the devil. And indeed, Bess was very popular in Roman Egypt, where some of these images may have originated.
I don't believe it is terracotta, and that too. You know, right? Terracotta is uh, it's made out of clay, and it's baked, and we've still got the complete sculpture without getting spoiled. It was from the period something 3000 BC. My goodness, how carefully these excavators would have worked to get the whole thing out, right? If it was buried under the ground or something like that. Yes, then where shall we go? Which period shall we go?
I want to see a mummy. Mummy.
Mummy. So Africa only, I don't know. We can just click and see. That's
Yeah.
Egypt. Let's see here. What do we have? Is this also bronze?
This is one of the most famous objects in the British Museum. It's a life-size cat, bequeathed by Major Geyer Anderson just before the Second World War. It has a very interesting history, dating back to 600 BC, as Neil Spencer, keeper of ancient Egypt and Nubia, explains.
This object is unusual in that it has a great ancient story, an early 20th century story, and then a very modern scientific story. So who was this cat? It's no pet cat, but rather a representation of a god, probably the goddess Bastet, who can be shown as a lioness-headed woman or as a cat. She was associated with healing, and indeed on this cat you can see a silver inlaid necklace with an image of the sacred Ujat eye associated with healing and becoming whole again. And then on her head there's a small scarab beetle depicted, and the scarab represents the morning form, the rising form of the sun. So again, to do with rebirth and eternal life. So that's an ancient object, probably dedicated in a temple by someone who wanted a long life, a good burial, maybe a child, dedicated by someone wealthy who could commission such a beautiful object in expensive copper alloy inlaid with gold, silver, and with gold earrings. There's also an intriguing 20th century story to this, giving the cat its name, the Geyer Anderson cat. So Robert Geyer Anderson was a major in the British Army stationed in Cairo in the early 20th century. And upon retiring, he moved into a historic 16th century house in Cairo. And he filled that house with antiquities from Syria, from China, from Egypt. And those antiquities are still in that house today, most of them as the Geyer Anderson house that can be visited. What's interesting about this is we know from his diary that one cold October morning in Cairo, this cat was brought to him, and it was full of corrosion and could hardly be seen. It was something heavy. He recognised it was significant, but exactly what lay beneath the corrosion wasn't clear. And it wasn't until 1939, after his death, that the cat was bequeathed to the British Museum. More recently, we found out a lot more about what Geyer Anderson did to this cat, and all is not as it seems. So we undertook radiographs, like x-rays, of the cat, and we found out that inside its head there's a lot of modern soldering, but there's also a machine-made modern cylinder, like a can or something, or an aluminium tube. We don't know what this is, we can't see it, but it's obviously not ancient. And our current understanding then, on the basis of these x-rays, is that this cat was probably falling to pieces. The head was about to fall off. And what Geyer Anderson did was he repaired it, soldering parts of the inside, inserting a modern metal tube, and then, very cleverly, he painted the whole thing in this greenish bronze colour, and None of us knew anything about it until we x-rayed it a few years ago. But what's really interesting is the stripes. There's 3 stripes of metal applied to the cat's tail, and these stripes of metal are actually made of a different composition. So we think the ancient craftsman was obviously going to great lengths to represent in as realistic form as possible the cat. You can see the curves of the back of the body, the asymmetry of the cat's body, but even to the extent of sourcing and mixing a different metal to represent the cat's stripy tail.
Interesting.
Auntie, can you show that mummy ka image?
Ranjini, yeah, so for that, can we also search by putting up the exact name of a place or something?
I need to check that. If one of you, I've shared the link on the chat. If one of you can check it.
Side.
Sorry?
I'm there, but I can't see anything where you can search. 1 second, I'll just find out.
Okay, you're trying this.
You can jump to these BCs and ADs. But no.
But particular name you're not able to find, right?
No.
So I think this is, shall I play this? It's a kind of a coffin.
This magnificent coffin was excavated from the tomb of Henuk-Mehit in Thebes, Egypt. It dates to the 19th dynasty, which was around 1250 BC. John Taylor, ancient Egyptian curator, explains why Henuk-Mehit went to so much trouble to decorate it so beautifully.
Henuk-Mehit was a lady of very high status in ancient Egypt, and we can tell this from looking at her coffins. She had 2 coffins, one inside the other, and also a mummy-shaped cover over the body itself. The outer coffin is partly painted and partly covered with gold leaf. You can see here an image of Henuk-Mehit as she wanted to be in the next life, eternally young and beautiful, with a very rich hairstyle, and below the image are inscriptions which are magical spells and figures of gods, and all of these are going to provide her with magical assistance to make a safe transition into the afterlife. Henuk-Mehit's family probably spent a very large amount on her burial outfit. We can tell this because not only the outer coffin is covered with gold, but also the inner one and the mummy cover. This shows how important it was for the Egyptians to reach the afterlife. Most ancient Egyptians had quite short lives. If you got to the age of 30, then you'd done very well. They looked forward to the eternal as the really important part of their existence. And that explains why they invested such enormous resources of materials and time and artistry in creating beautiful objects for the tomb.
If we want mummy, does it come under living and dying section? We can click living and dying section and see.
There is living and dying section. Where is it?
It's down. It's like there'll be some. Yes, that side. There is one eye kind of thing. Can you see?
Eye.
On the side, gray color.
You're in art and design. You have to go to living and dying there.
You just need to click living and dying.
Ranjini auntie.
Where is living and dying?
In
the right side.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Towards, yeah, right there.
Yes, because
I want to see a mummy.
I had all your the thing dropped down there, so I could not. So I clicked on living and dying, and then look at that, there's so many. So again, Asia.
In Asia, in India, Rajasthan, Jaipur, we have Albert Hall
This
Museum.
is all about what is there in the British Museum. So let's try a look.
Okay.
So let's try a look.
I want to see them.
This is from something called Assyrians Northwest Palace. I don't know where this is.
I've got
This is really interesting. See, this is a relief work on the wall. This is again some Arab place. You see a lot of relief work in our architecture, the temples and all that, like Ajanta, Ellora, and all. But it is more protruding out. Okay, so this is like the stone is there and the sculpture is more protruding out. Literally, 75% of the figurines would have come out of the main wall. But here it's a very flat, very thin relief work. So let's see.
This stone panel was on the walls of the palace of King Ashurbanipal at Nimrud in northern Iraq. As Nigel Tallis of the Department of the Middle East explains, it shows tribute bearers presenting the king with monkeys. But what does it mean?
This is an extremely impressive relief slab. It's very impressive because of its size. When you stand in front of it, it towers over you, these monumental figures. And the figures themselves are intriguing. The scene is exotic. It's meant to be. It's showing people from the distant West. We can tell from the way that they're dressed something about where they come from. If you see, they're wearing turbans and pointy-toed shoes, and they're bringing monkeys, unusual, strange, rare creatures. Now, this slab once decorated the approach to the king's throne room. So it was meant to impress, and it was meant to evoke, and it was summarizing, in some ways, imperial ideology. Everybody is bringing their tribute to the great king, monkeys from Africa, from the edges of the world. This is a man who has achieved much. It was his job to establish. The Syrian king was also the chief priest of the Assyrian state god.
Hello,
And it's his job to expand Ashur. So these are the peoples of the world bringing their gifts and treasures to Assyria.
Yes, Vimal.
Ranjini auntie, I have one doubt. How the mummy formed?
Ah, how the mummy is formed. We'll figure that out. I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay, I want your attention here on the beard and the jewelry part. So intricately they've carved it, no?
Yeah.
The parts in the middle, I mean, it feels as if they're written something there.
Yes, it
Yeah, from far it looked like that. From near, it's looking like something else. That's why I zoomed it.
It's actually something written on Egypt language.
Ah. And look at, see the monkey's hands?
It's also like a human.
Yes. Hmm. So
Maybe the monkeys in that time used to be like that.
But is it in Ranjini? Are you sure it's in what do you call living and dying? The what do you call mummy? Or
I clicked on living and dying, and
is it in living and dying or power of identity, religion and belief, trade and conflict?
currently it's living and dying.
You have to go to the Africa's oldest one. There is a tool of.
Yes,
that's the oldest tool, and that's the oldest thing the British Museum has.
This is the one, the oldest stone they have found out. Yeah.
Made nearly 2 million years ago, stone tools such as this are the first known technological invention. This one is the oldest object in the British Museum. It is an Olduvai stone chopping tool from Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania. It is nearly 2 million years old. Here is Christopher Spring to tell us more.
So this is the oldest object in the British Museum's collections, almost 2 million years old. It was found, I think, by Louis Leakey in the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. And it's the oldest of many extraordinary chopping tools and then later more worked hand axes from this part of Africa. It's a wonderful kind of tactile piece, quite wonderful to hold and to think of through the age of the work, but how practical in many ways it was, and how later on, hand axes were crafted not just for functional purposes of cutting meat, as this very ancient piece was, but the very first art objects, if you like. Some of the pieces from about 800,000 years old were actually worked in very fragile materials like quartz and worked to such fine points that it seems almost as if they were no longer, in this instance, functional objects, but objects created as the first art objects.
Yeah, that's the oldest they have in their museum. And then
How is it so precious?
how is it so precious? What do you think? Why is it precious?
It is so old. You have to.
Because all of the rocks stay for like a lot of time.
Yeah, but this is, I think so. This is the only rock which is stayed for 2 million years.
Yes, and it was not only a rock, it was a tool. It was
Tool of
created,
chopping.
or it was made it that way so that they can use it as a tool. So this one again, another
That
tool.
is Paleolithic age.
This small 800,000-year-old hand axe, recovered from Bed 4 in the Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, is one of the most beautiful in the British Museum. It is made from quartz with amethyst banding, but is it art? Asks Christopher Spring.
This hand axe from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, this one is about 1.2 million years old. But there is an older one in our collections, a kind of chunky one from about 2 million years old. This is shaped into a point and a rounded end at the opposite end, but it would not have been the point that would be used for cutting. That would have been where you would have held this hand axe, and the kind of rounded, bulbous, larger end would have been the cutting end. These were found in Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, excavated by Louis Leakey. And then hand axes spread throughout Africa, and you find exquisite hand axes from slightly later periods, worked in various different materials. But the most beautiful object in many ways, functional but moving towards something that is a crossover between an art object and a functional object.
What do you think? How would they made these hand axes?
There are more photos.
You want to see?
Yes.
So what do you think? How they would have made? Yes.
It's 11:50.
Yeah.
Just a fact.
Yeah. So just a bit. So my question is, how do you think they would have made this hand axes? With what tools they would have made?
With like really sharp ones, and the most sharpest tools, which is made by lava.
Sharpest what?
The most sharpest tools on the earth.
What are those tools? This is 2 million years ago.
Another stone.
So they made stone axes with another stone. Because the knives and all were not invented.
Is this Stone Age time?
This is called Paleolithic.
Yeah, it is Stone
Very
Age.
near to Stone Age. Just they're evolving. Okay. So
Vimal is raising hands.
Vimal, Nisha. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How would they have known that that was going to, like when they were excavating, how did they know that hand axe wasn't just another rock? How did they know that it was something that they used to use in their daily lives?
Yeah, they would find some traces and the early, they would have found so many of it, right? And
Yeah.
there is a study and which will lead, and there are these archaeologists will be recording on this is not like, you know, the minute they find this tool they would decide that this is an hand axe. There is a
Okay.
study which involves, and then they understand the pattern and then they figure out that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Ranjini auntie.
Ah, yes.
Last, last you can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes, I can
last
hear
you
you.
showed on stone, no, like triangle. They
Hmm.
curved like that, or it's already like that only in nature.
No, that is made. That's a man-made thing. That is what that person was telling. They made, that's a hand axe. So during that period, where do they use axe? They would use it to hunt, right? They were
Yes.
eating animals, so they use it for hunting, right? So they created that. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
man.
I know. They will make the stone sharp and they will kill the animals.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
seeing in the Stone Age story.
Ah, you saw it in the Stone Age. Okay. Yes, there are a lot of it. 1 hour is not enough for us to browse through all the artifacts in the British Museum. So, I would like to hear from you. How was your experience going on a virtual tour of the museum?
So there were a lot of museums. That stone was interesting.
And the stone was interesting for you. Okay.
Yeah, looks like it was made like metal, lava.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, it was made like water and fire, something.
The triangle shaped stone was also used to make spears in the world.
Mhm. Maybe the next thing was that they created spear after that. Okay. Digi writes stone tools were used to cut plants to surgery. Okay, so we have more information Vijay uncle is sharing here. Yes. Yes, go ahead. How was it?
It was fun.
It was a lot of facts which I have never known.
Mm,
We
yes.
learned many things in the British too.
So you
It
can
is good. Right?
sit and browse every day.
That's really nice. Can you put more of that thing for me though?
Sorry?
Sorry, my mic was on.
Okay. Yes. And then it is from different periods, different continents. So maybe we can browse in I don't think you can browse it in the mobile. I think this is, you need to see this on the
Yes.
laptop or the computer. So maybe you can click your discoveries if you find anything interesting and share it on Discord, so that if probably you can choose just one continent and keep browsing the entire thing, or you can mix and match, or just choose the timeline. And if you find anything interesting that excited you, you can share it on Discord, and probably share a little bit of more information if that created some curiosity. And then you like the way I told about bronze sculptures, then if it is connecting to how did they discover bronze and things like that, you can share, so we all get to know more about the primitives and different dynasties. Leela writes, I was thinking, how did they collate so much of information? Hmm. Same here, also putting up an audio description. Yes. Yeah, they also have a QR code. If you go to the museum, you can just scan it and you get the entire thing. Like if you're on your earpods or you're on your this thing, it keeps reading. So you're just standing in front of the the thing, the artifact, and then somebody is telling you all the information about that particular thing. It's brilliantly created. I really wish, our countries, the thing also should, escalate to that level of giving information and understanding of the architectures and the sculptures and the paintings what we've been seeing. Has anyone visited Salarjung Museum in Hyderabad? Okay, Aditi has visited. That's the biggest museum I have visited in this country. And just one day or couple of hours is not enough. You will enjoy the entire collection over there. It's really nice, from paintings to all these um, primitive artifacts is found there. And the
Do you have a
costume,
mummy there?
for mummy. I don't think. But there are paintings from other countries. They have it, like which they got it as gifts for those kings, those sultans. They had it as gifts. Like you'll get to find different coins and paintings from different countries and continents.
There's
Yeah.
one museum in Rajasthan.
Okay.
Yeah, Aditi, go ahead.
Yeah, Didi, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just telling about this one mummy. I think it is the only mummy in India. This is in Albert Hall Museum in Jaipur. So there is one mummy kept there, and उसमें something very interesting was there apart from the mummy. I'll just recollect and I'll share it on this call.
Yeah. So I was telling it's not mummy, but I don't know if anybody has visited in Mumbai. There is a museum of birds. It's called Salim Ali Museum. Some of you are interested in birds. So Salim Ali used actually, live birds for his. He would kill them and stuff them and preserve them for his studies and all that. So that whole entire collection is put up in the museum. Yeah, so
I would not like to see dead birds because I don't like dead birds and I don't like people who kill pet birds.
yeah. So people who are interested to see them, yeah, it brings a different kind of emotions when you see them, but possibly his intentions were different, and then that's how he did for all that. So yeah, so it's not Mummy Preeti, but it's a it's a different version of Mummy. If you're interested, in Mumbai, you might have visited already.
Is it about like bird mummies there, kind of?
Oh yeah, there's a huge place with all kinds of birds. Whatever he collected is all put up in. It's in fort area.
Okay.
I never knew mummy was real. I never knew there
It's
were
called, I think Salim Ali's Birds Museum.
Salim
only. Yeah, Salim Ali. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Smriti was saying something.
I never knew there was an actual mummy in this world. I thought that was just a myth. And I never knew there was like actual magic in this world. Yeah, I didn't know there was a mummy. I had a book which had like all these details of how they used to build like the pyramids and all and everything about a lot of things about Egypt. I don't know where it is now. I've just misplaced it.
Interesting. When you find it, share it.
I just want to
Yeah.
remind it's 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
12, 1, 12.
Thank
2.
you. Bye.
Thank you, Ranjini, for bringing this just an exposure of this virtual tour. It's so amazing to see. So, anyone interested in exploring more of this ancient old forms of art and all these kind of things, you can explore and share in Discord how was it for you to explore this journey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me also.
Thank you, Ranjini.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranjini auntie.
Thank you, Ranjini. Bye.
It's a treasure you have given, historical treasure.
Yes, we all will enjoy whenever we have time.
Thank you so much, Ranjini aunty.
Welcome, sweetheart. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Over to.
Bye-bye.
Where is our Sumedh? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Sumedh is here. Yeah. Yes, Sumedh. Today we have
Pita bread by
Yes.
Vijay. He's gonna show us
Oh, sorry, I
how
stopped
how
recording.
he has